us know when we are, that would be great.
Cloud, you're live whenever you're ready to go.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I will recall to order this meeting of the Corporate and Community Services meeting of the town of Collingwood. We have been in recess since Monday evening, and I'll call us out of recess at this I don't need a motion for that, do I, Clerk Almus? I don't think I do. I'm going to call us out of recess, and we'll begin. We've already had our land acknowledgement. And so we'll move on to item 2, which is the adoption of the agenda. And I'll need a mover and a seconder for moving the agenda. There we have Vice Chair Madigan and Councillor Berman. And is there any business arising from the minutes of the last meeting? Seeing none, I will move on. I will bring to the committee's attention that you may find that there's a numbering change because we went into recess. We updated the agenda. So some things that you may find if you printed your agenda out prior to today, you may find that the numbers are a teeny bit different. So take my word for it that item 3 is declarations of pecuniary interest. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest from members of the committee this evening? Seeing none. We're right into staff reports. Item 4.1. Oh, and I do have to say that Councillor Comey has sent her regrets for this meeting. And so I am going to turn to CAO Skinner to discuss staff report CAO 2021-06, the draft agreement between the town and the Downtown Collingwood BIA regarding expectations and obligations of the parties. Thank you for joining us, CAO Skinner.
Oh, we can't hear you. It does not look like you're muted.
How about now? Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chair McLeod. I really am just introducing this piece. This is an item that has come up for some time. I think there's been a good working relationship between the BIA, the Business Improvement Association, and the town for many years. But there are a few areas where we've continued to discuss how to move forward and who should do what. And as it was really town-wide and was about taking a fair and consistent and complete look at all of the work, I did ask Clerk Almus to run point. She's been supporting the BIA for some time through their renewal and their new members. To take the handle on this. So she's going to walk you through this report, and she'll probably say this as well, but we do want to emphasize how much we appreciate the BIA and how much they do for our downtown. And I think the members today would probably likely feel the same way. So over to you, Clerk Almus.
Thank you, CAO Skinner. So we do have a very brief slide deck to present to the committee and the public this evening. So we'll go to our first slide that surrounds the purpose. So the purpose of this report is to develop a document setting out responsibilities and expectations between the town and the Collingwood downtown business improvement area. And as CAO Skinner had alluded to, this has actually been, over an 8-month process in between the various priorities of the different departments, a very collaborative approach because the BIA and the town do share and provide and do supports in various areas through their operations. So we'll go to our next slide. So this basically describes what a BIA is. So a BIA is a business improvement association. It allows local business people and commercial property owners and tenants to join together. And the mandate that's provided for BIAs is included in the Municipal Act. It's Section 204, and it's to provide the oversight of improvement, beautification, and maintenance of municipally owned land, buildings, and structures in the area that is beyond that's provided at the expense of the municipality generally, and to promote the area as a business or shopping area. So BIAs are discretionary. Municipalities are not required to have BIAs. They are generally established at the request of the business and property owners. They operate with money that's collected by the town, but it's solely paid by their own membership. Since BIAs are discretionary and generally for the benefit of their membership, there remains a dichotomy between the importance and vibrancy the business community provides and the use of overall taxpayer funds that appear to benefit a particular segment of the municipality. So our next slide. So our downtown Collingwood BIA was established in 1977 with subsequent boundary expansions occurring in 2004 and 2015. The town and community do appreciate our BIA and the work they do to make the downtown and the overall community successful, including their volunteer contributions by many. The downtown Collingwood BIA is envied by many BIAs across the province. And looking at the need to establish agreements, we've heard from the BIA, even at our BIA meetings, the need to understand who's responsible for what. And this is kind of setting out the importance of having such an agreement. So the town values this investment that the BIA does provide to the community, and also believe that the town has a role in the continued success of the BIA area because it is our largest economic center. Ensuring that taxpayer dollars invested in the BIA is not considered as bonusing. The municipality can have more than one BIA, and therefore we need to ensure that there's a clear expectation of services and supports the municipality is willing and able to provide. And BIAs do need individuals and volunteers to carry out their operations. The municipality needs to determine their capacity and liability to provide support. Unlike other municipal services boards that provide programs and services to all constituents, the BIA board operates on behalf of its membership. We've often heard the correlation between the police services board or the public library board, which is also utilizes municipal supports. However, they operate for the entire benefit of the municipality. So we have to be cognizant of that piece. And our next slide looks at our division of responsibilities. So when we, all departments took a look at this, considerations included town staff capacity and the cost to provide the support, any potential liability to the municipality, i.e. impacts regarding insurance claims, WSIB and health and safety, the importance of a successful and vibrant downtown with respect to social, economic, and cultural factors, consistency / precedent for providing support should another BIA be requested and established in Collingwood. This was something that there was discussion, I would say probably within the last 10 years about potential BIAs, even along First Street or setting up in the Western Commercial Node. So we do have to be cognizant that that could become reality. And the last bullet is partnership opportunities to share funding for infrastructure, services, and events. And that's been a key component because the BIA has been great partners with various initiatives such as the downtown modernization or revitalization that occurred over 10 years ago. So our next slide, the town supports to the BIA. So the municipality is obligated to provide the following services. So the collection of the BIA levy, the Integrity Commissioner and closed meeting investigation services, MFIPA support, board member insurance coverage, infrastructure maintenance and beautification to normal town standards, and access to the town's auditor. However, it's not a requirement the town pays for the expense of the service. So the items that we're not obligated to provide that we do provide additional supports with is payroll services, financial services, procurement, governance, insurance coverage and claims administration, WSIB and insurance, and we'll get into a little bit of that, I believe, in our next slide. IT services, health and safety supports, professional supports such as HR, legal support on occasion, generally paid for at their own expense unless it is something of municipal interest that, that we could support. Promotion and events, and economic development supports above the normal town standards. Our next slide describes this has been a big decision and discussion going forward. A memorandum of understanding is really how this whole process started. The BIA several years ago had requested that the BIA and town enter into an MOU. And once we really started evaluating between all the different departments, the amount of support that the town provides, we're thinking that the most appropriate approach would be to enter into an operating agreement. So the difference with an MOU is that it is a formal agreement, but it's not legally binding. The agreement describing, so it is an agreement describing a bilateral or multilateral agreement between parties. The Ontario Business Improvement Area Association has identified MOUs as a best practice for municipalities and their BIAs. And there's no obligation for either party to fulfill their responsibilities nor ability to manage risk and associated liabilities with an MOU. So the benefits of proceeding with an operating agreement, it is a binding agreement. It can identify programs, services, and facilities, including division of responsibilities and shared roles, as well as providing a framework for managing liability and risk. An operating agreement would also act as a legally enforceable contract between the parties with mutual obligations. And there must be a lawful offer and a lawful acceptance for an operating agreement to actually come to fruition. So our next slide is, as you'll note on the bottom of the staff report, has been the detailed list that's been put together and reviewed on several occasions, and it defines the obligations and expectations of the BIA and that of the town, and they're broken down into these 12 categories. And I won't get into too much detail regarding the specifics of these. If there is any questions after the presentation that members have, then we can address them. And department heads that are available this evening will be able to assist if there's any in their specific areas. We'll go to our next slide, just reviews the recommendation. So again, we wanted to bring this first to our standing committee and council as an item to move forward. And if council supports this, this would be the initiation of a true consultation with the BIA about what's been identified as the obligations and expectations, as well as discussion regarding an MOU versus the operating agreement. And that's it.
Thank you, Clerk Almus. I will turn to the people who are in our attendee waiting room to see whether there are any comments or questions from the public on this staff report.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair McLeod. So we do have attendees today. If you wish to speak to the committee during any of the sessions that are opened up to the public following staff reports, as indicated by the chair, please press the raise your hand feature. If you're on a telephone, please press *9. And it doesn't look like any public comments regarding this report at this time.
Thank you. And so I'll turn to the committee to look for a mover and a seconder to that staff report CAO. Thank you, Councillor Berman and Vice Chair Madigan. That staff report CAO 2021-06 draft agreement between the town and Downtown Collingwood BIA regarding expectations and obligations of parties be received. And further, that council direct staff to commence discussions and consultation with the Downtown Collingwood BIA regarding the preparation of an operating agreement between the parties based on the draft chart of expectations and obligations contained herein, and report back to council not later than July 2021. Any comment, question, query from the committee? Vice Chair Madigan.
Thank you very much, Chair McLeod, through you to our CAO and our clerk. I want to personally thank both of you. I have, just for the public, if they're watching, and if they don't know who I am, I've had a business in the downtown for 30 years. and I am a member of the BIA. You are membership by location. You don't get a choice whether you can join it or not. And anything that the town does for the BIA doesn't directly affect my business, so that's not why I don't step out of it. Anyways, back to my compliments. Thank you very much, Clerk Almas. Thank you very much, CEO Skinner. This has been long overdue. The BIA has been asking for it, and I never understood what stood in their way. So thank you for picking up the ball that was obviously dropped and continuing to the success of our downtown and our community as a whole. So on behalf of everybody that's been asking me to do something about it, which I've stayed away from, I'm honestly giving you my great thanks for finally doing something that I never understood why it took this long. I appreciate it.
Comments or questions from the rest of the committee? Mayor Saunderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Sarah. I just want to be sure I understand that why we're moving away from a memorandum of understanding to an operating agreement. And I understand that one's binding and one's not. And so if I've got this right, the feeling is that given the types of obligations that we're agreeing to do and the potential liability for some of those, that we feel it's important to have an actual operating agreement that's enforceable.
That is correct, Your Worship. Okay.
And so I guess then what we'd be looking to do, and when we deal with the BIA, is discuss the terms, and then we'd have to engage counsel to prepare the agreement.
That's
okay.
Correct.
And do we have a sense of what that might cost? Just I'm in agreement with the operating agreement concept. I agree that there's large obligations there and potential liability. I'm just wondering if we have a sense of what it might cost to prepare the agreement.
Through Chair McLeod to Member Mayor Saunderson, we actually do have a somewhat of a draft put together. So based on our discussions with the BIA, we would finalize that and then have it reviewed by our solicitors before it's presented back to council. So we're thinking that it wouldn't be significant because staff would be doing the legwork behind it.
Okay, thank you for that. Those are my questions.
Only one of you left. Any, there we go. And so I'll call the vote I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, that passes, carried. We move on now to item 4.2, which is the sale of alcohol at food truck establishments. And I will ask Clerk Almas to speak to this.
Certainly, thank you, Chair McLeod. So we do have, we don't have a formal presentation. We do have some speaking notes. This has been a quick turnaround to put this forward. So I will ask Deputy Clerk Dahl if she would like to present, and both myself and Executive Director Dean Culver will help to address any sort of questions that the Standing Committee has.
Clerk Dahl, Deputy Clerk Dahl.
Thank you, Chair McLeod. So in follow-up to the proposal provided by 1858 Caesar Bar on April the 19th to sell alcohol out of the food truck in Millennium Park, and Council's decision for staff to further review the merits of the request, staff have received an overwhelming response to this proposal. Since April 19th, we've received 4 additional requests from local food vendors wishing to operate a licensed food truck in Millennium Park as well this summer. And 1858 Caesar Bar has since provided some additional detail to their proposal, requesting an area of approximately 7,900 square feet, which would include a trailer used for their food truck, portable hand washing and washroom facilities, and a designated area for alcohol consumption. Feedback was also received by a number of residents not in support of the sale of alcohol in parks, as they feel that these park areas should be for the enjoyment of the natural space and surroundings, more so than consumption of alcohol. The business licensing bylaw that governs the licensing of food trucks in Collingwood is based on a set criteria, which licenses issued on a first come first served basis on desired location. The current fees for a food vendor license is $533, and this is an annual fee with permits valid from January 1st to December 31st. So they would be required to renew this permit on a yearly basis. The reviewing of the proposal provided by 1858 Caesar Bar, the current bylaw is silent to the sale of alcohol, and it's also not intended to consume such a large area or footprint within a park that would solely benefit the specific food truck operator. As such, council approval for this type of proposal would be required because it's outside of the scope of the bylaw. Other considerations to the sale of alcohol in a park include additional health and safety risks and liability, traffic impacts and parking allotments, availability of public washrooms, alcohol consumption near water, compliance with the town's land use policies with regard to green space and parks, compliance with AGCO licensing requirements, enforcement, and overall enjoyment of the park by all users. With the amount of interest from other entrepreneurs in providing a similar food vending experience in Millennium Park, it's also important to keep in mind the fairness and equal opportunity to be provided to everyone that's interested. To provide for fair opportunity to better understand the needs of the community in relation to providing such food truck amenities within our parks that allow for the sale of alcohol, and to better understand the demands that such amenities can put onto our parks in regard to parking, flow of vehicles, accessing the site, available washroom facilities, and so on. Staff are recommending a review of the business licensing schedule scheduled specifically for food vendors be undertaken in preparation for 2022, and such proposals not be permitted for 2021. This approach would include a full review of the current bylaw, compare research and best practices from other communities, evaluate other opportunities that could be explored to better allow equal opportunity and access for food truck operators in municipal property, consideration of alcohol at these locations, gain a better understanding of how these alcohol licenses would apply to such a transient business such as a food truck for an extended period of time, and to provide full public consultation on the subject matter before moving forward. So I don't know if there's anything that Director Culver has to add from a parks perspective, and I'd be happy to address any questions from the committee.
AED Culver, do you have anything to add?
Not much, really. I think Becky's definitely covered all of it. The only thing I'll say is that when we were first approached, I think we were sort of the mind, or I was of the mind at least, that this was an opportunity to run a pilot that where we could test you know, all of the outcomes. But the feedback we got immediately following the presentation, where it was initially introduced to council, kind of told us that a pilot would be problematic. So I think now we're back into our normal mode, which is, you know, creating a framework for this to be able to be possible, if it's possible, after an appropriate and fulsome public consultation. So this is a much more comfortable space for administration to be and bring a proper recommendation to council.
Thank you. So I will turn to our attendees to see if there's anyone who is interested in making comment on what Deputy Clerk Dahl and Acting Executive Director Culver have had to say regarding this issue.
Certainly. Thanks, Chair McLeod. If there's any attendees wishing to speak, please press the raise your hand feature or *9 if you're on a telephone. Chair McLeod, we have Vanessa Walker would like to address council or committee.
Thank you. Happy to hear from you, Ms. Walker.
It's Mr. Walker as well.
Oh, well, your name came up as Vanessa.
it definitely did. And Vanessa was very, even though we're not on camera, a little camera shy. Microphone shy. First of all, good evening, everybody. And thank you all for your time. And surprise, surprise, yes, it's us again. In respect and in the spirit of Parks and Rec and the staff recommendations, after we spoke with the deputy clerk, the clerk, and dean on a Zoom meeting ourselves, you know, we were at the point where we want to obviously work with staff. We understand their positioning, we understand their concerns. After further digesting it, and the other day, I believe that, you know, with the recess happening, believe it or not, we were tied up in Salvo Beach, so we wouldn't have been able to speak that day. We're at, you know, we understand staff's decision, and at first, and you know, supportive of it. However, when we go back and we read back what was written, I think a lot of it can still be part of a pilot project, and this is where I go back to this, because we can launch it and Dean had mentioned that, with the framework, and I get all that. And we, when you look at the objections that were overcome, I was told it was 100% negative feedback. Now we can look at social media and look at those kind of forums. It was not 100% negative feedback. We had 95% of approval from the public on our platforms. Having said that, we were told it was 100% negative feedback from staff. All we potentially ask council, can council essentially assist staff to overcome some of those objections? How can we assist overcome some of those objections and potentially proceed forward with that pilot? And we understand that there's going to be other entrepreneurs. We respect that. We're the first to approach it. I think we were successful in our past pilot projects to where, they were positive outcomes. One being the winter outdoor patio. We overcame many of the objections, and here we are continuing with outdoor patios. I believe that we are the right company, as there are many entrepreneurs out there, but I believe we're the right ones to do it right with the facilities and the way we're going to do it. If it's pertaining to minimizing square footage, minimizing the trailer side, we're obviously open ears, because we too believe it's an important thing, not just because of the times, not to bring up COVID or anything else. People want to get outdoors. And I still believe, in the spirit of everything, it's easy for me to say it is the right decision. However, I'm not trying to be fighting with everybody going back and forth, but if council can assist us with potentially moving with the pilot project this year, it'll create better framework for next year and to see whether it is even a viable option moving forward, in my humble opinion. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what we have to say. Vanessa's still here though.
Thank you very much to the walkers, both of them, Steve and Vanessa, for your time. Any other any questions from the committee for the walkers? Okay, seeing none, I'll thank you for your time. And I will ask if there's any others who would like to speak.
At this time, Chair McLeod, there is not.
All right, and so to get this on the floor, I'll need a mover and a seconder. That staff report CAO 2021, you're so quick. Draft agreement between town and downtown, nope, next one down, sorry. Staff report C 2021-09, sale of alcohol at food truck establishments be received, and that council direct staff to undertake a full review of the licensing of food vendors in preparation for the 2022 permit season as described within the report, including a detailed public consultation component to the review, and that council requests received in 2021 for food vendor licenses wishing to sell alcohol not be permitted and be referred to the review of the licensing of food vendors for further consideration to ensure fair and equal opportunity. And I have a mover from Vice Chair Madigan and a seconder from Councillor Berman. And is there any discussion, questions, queries on this staff report from members of this committee? Mayor Saunderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, I've listened to the walkers, and I applaud them for their entrepreneurialism and for all they've done on the downtown, and for bringing this initiative forward. However, I think it does raise some philosophical issues about park and public spaces. And I know that the City of Toronto recently deferred this issue as well. So while I think this is an interesting concept, I agree with staff's report that this is something that probably needs to be paused this year so that we can do the proper legwork to give it a considered decision. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Any other members of the committee? And so with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 4.3, which is the proposed public awareness campaign and flag policy update. And I will turn again to Clerk Almas. It looks as though she's in a halo of light.
I'm going to have to shut these blinds. Thank you, Chair McLeod. So I will ask Jenny Haynes to join us to give us a brief overview. She coordinates all of our flag raising and proclamation requests. And we get a lot of requests for lighting up various monuments. So in discussions with our facility staff, when they're looking at our flag raisings or doing regular maintenance, they said it would be pretty simple just to see if, we could, find something that, could provide some collaboration with our organizations that have been requesting at a very limited expense. So Jenny put a little bit of time putting this report together, and we look forward to her presentation and the committee's consideration.
Committee for having me here tonight. Okay. Again.
Having a little trouble with your volume.
I'll speak a little louder.
There you go.
All right. So first slide, please. So in February of 2017, the Public Awareness Campaign, Flag, and Proclamation Policy came into effect. So consistent with the town's community-based strategic plan, the Office of the Mayor works with local community groups to support awareness campaigns through initiatives such as proclamations and flag raising events. Public awareness campaign requests are often accompanied by a request to light up a town monument a certain color in order to recognize a special event or occasion. Without a formal policy or procedure in place, these requests are denied. So in order to provide community groups with fair, consistent, and safe means to support these types of requests, staff are recommending an update to policy 2017-01. Next slide, please. So just a bit of background here. In addition to the various proclamation and flag raising requests that we get, over the past 12 months, the Office of the Mayor has received 7 requests to light up a monument for an event or special occasion. And again, without a formal policy, without proper equipment and resources, these requests have been denied. Next slide, please. So looking at some landmark considerations. So staff undertook an assessment of the proposed awareness campaign initiatives and identified 3 landmarks for consideration. Option 1 being the terminals, option 2 being the Collingwood Public Library, and option 3, the Town Hall Clock Tower. Next slide. So taking a closer look at the options, we have option 1, the terminals. So when we were considering this location, staff felt that flood lighting the monument would be the best method to light up the face of the landmark. But the illumination from the floodlights was faint and it didn't provide that desired impact when it was viewed from a distance. There was also some concern with vandalism of the lighting system and safety of staff when accessing that building. So this option is not recommended. Looking at option 2, the library, in 2019, staff did a test at the library in recognition of British Home Child Day. So floodlighting the outside of the building didn't create that desired effect. So what staff did is they installed red and blue lights inside the library instead. When the lights were turned off in the building, the desired effect was achieved. But staff found that manually replacing the indoor lighting was a very time-consuming exercise, and the library cleaning staff work at night, so the interior lights of the building had to be left on, and then the desired effect was lost. So this option is also not recommended. So option 3 is the Town Hall Clock Tower. So testing at Town Hall included floodlighting the outside of the building, lighting up the clock face inside the clock tower, and then lighting up the clock face along with the clock tower belfry, which is just underneath the clock. Staff found that lighting the exterior of the building didn't provide that desired effect we were looking for. And the outcome of lighting the clock face and the belfry was quite significant, and it provided that effect that we were looking for. So this is our recommended option. Next slide, please. So here you have scenario 1, in which staff lit up the clock face only, and scenario 2, where staff lit up the clock face and the belfry. So the outcome of using colored floodlights is quite significant, and it does provide that desired effect that we want. So in order to avoid any concerns with staff constantly having to access the bell tower, if we are moving forward with the pilot project, staff will continue to explore lighting systems that can be controlled remotely using a remote control or even a smartphone app. And then this will reduce the need for staff to have to access the bell tower. Next slide, please. So there's a few things that staff took into consideration with moving forward with the pilot project. So the Collingwood Heritage Committee who's in full support of the pilot project, has confirmed that a permit isn't needed since the lighting for the project is inside the clock tower. And approval for this pilot project was granted by the Ontario Heritage Trust with a request to let them know if we change the scope of work at all. Next slide. So in looking at procedures, if we move forward, so requests will continue to come through the Office of the Mayor and will be considered on a first come, first served basis. Requests will be circulated to council and staff in the same manner that proclamations and flag raising requests are. There will be a set color palette that lights can be chosen from during this pilot period. I believe we have orange, pink, blue, green, and red. And these colors would be expanded on depending on the success of the pilot and costs. Additional public awareness, we will put these Light Up the Town campaigns on consent agendas. And the clock tower at Town Hall will be lit for a maximum of 1 week per request. And next slide. So subject to council's approval, our next steps will be that staff will launch the pilot project on July 1st. Staff will determine the frequency of these requests and monitor all feedback received from the community during the pilot project. And if successful, staff will update the policy in the request form or just otherwise discontinue this program altogether. And staff will run the pilot project based on the available 2021 operating budget, and any expenditures that may be required to upgrade the current lighting system will be requested in the 2022 budget for consideration. And next slide. I think that's it. Yeah. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to help.
Thank you. And I'll turn to the clerk to see whether there are any attendees who are interested in asking questions or making comment on this report.
And again, and our attendees, please press the raise your hand feature should you wish to address committee regarding this report. It looks like there's no interest at this time, Chair McLeod.
Thank you. And so I'll look for a mover and a seconder that staff report C2021-11, Light Up the Town, proposed public awareness campaign and flag policy update be received, and that the Light Up the Town public awareness campaign initiative be applied as a pilot project effective July 1st, 2021 through to December 31st, 2021, as recommended herein. I'll take the mover from Councillor Berman and a seconder from Vice Chair Madigan, and I'll look for comments from the committee. None at all? Comments, questions? There we go. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? That's unanimous. And I think that was Ms. Haynes' first presentation to council. So well done.
Thank you for having me.
There we go. And we will move on. And well, thank you for having been here. Item 4.4, municipal alcohol policy update. And I believe we are going to hear from Acting Executive Director Culver on this issue.
Thank you, Chair. You're actually going to hear from Manager Karen Cubitt on this one. Passing it along. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. A series of updates to the municipal alcohol policy were drafted in 2020 as a result of the regulatory changes implemented by the Government of Ontario in 2019. And based on current municipal best practices and recommendations from our Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. You'll recall that these were presented to Council late last year and were approved to proceed to public consultation. And that public feedback was gathered through the Engage Collingwood platform. It was over the course of 4 weeks in January, and the results of which led to this final proposed series of updates presented in tonight's report. While both the current and proposed policies were available to the public in their entirety, and all the proposed changes were available for comment, we elected to highlight the 4 changes that would be the most significant to the public and which we expected would garner the most feedback. And these were prohibiting events sanctioned under a tailgate event special occasion permit, identifying that liquor may only be sold and served between the hours of 11 a.m. and 1 a.m. rather than the expanded hours of service beginning at 9 a.m. Permitted by the updated Liquor License Act. Third, requiring that food must be available and that alcohol-only events are prohibited. And lastly, prohibiting the mixing of alcohol and edible cannabis, including cannabis beverages, by permitted event staff, and discouraging the mixing of these two by patrons in accordance with recommendations from the health unit. So you'll see in the report, under the input from other sources section, the input from the public wasn't huge, but we count it all as valuable. We had 65 visitors to the engagement tool, resulting in 41 contributions from the public. And of the 4 significant updates highlighted in public consultation, in each case, the majority of the survey respondents indicated support for our proposed changes. We also received a few open-ended comments, which leaned more in disagreement to the proposed changes and which challenged staff to contemplate the extent to which the municipality imposes restrictions related to alcohol consumption in its facilities. Some of these comments also suggested that there was a bit of a misunderstanding in some cases, that the municipal alcohol policy applies solely to activities licensed to take place on municipal property and has no bearing on private businesses operating a licensed establishment in Collingwood. Overall, the majority of the feedback received was in favor of the original proposed updates. And with this, alongside municipal liability considerations and the feedback provided by the health unit, the OPP, and fire department, staff have elected to put forward the same proposed updates previously presented to council for your approval. That's what I have.
Thank you. And I will turn to the clerk to see whether there is any comment from the public on this report.
Certainly, Chair McLeod. It doesn't look like there's anyone interested from the public wishing to speak to this report at this time.
Thank you. And so I'll turn to our committee, and I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder that staff report PRC 2021-03 Municipal Alcohol Policy Update to be received, and that council approve the proposed municipal alcohol policy update as presented. And that will be moved by Councillor Berman and seconded by Vice Chair Madigan. I'm going to have to look up quicker. Yeah. Are there questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, I will call the vote. I'll call the question. All those who approve. And that is passed unanimously. Thank you so much, Manager Cubitt. We move on now to item 4.5, which is the allocation of the 2021 Community Recreation and Culture Grant. And I do believe we go back to Acting Executive Director Culver on this. Busy guy.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. And I actually get to go back to Manager Cubitt again. Everybody else gets to do the heavy lifting tonight. But I'll start by saying that this is our annual feedback to committee regarding the CRG outcomes. So I'll let Karen take it away.
Thank you, Director Culver. So we're pleased to announce the recipients of this year's Community Recreation and Culture Grants. 2021 continues to be a challenging year for the recreation and culture activity providers in our community. And we applaud both last year's grant recipients and this year's for their ingenuity, patience, and tenacity to continue finding ways to provide the programs that they do for our community. The CRCG is intended to assist nonprofit, charitable, or volunteer-based organizations or groups that operate in the town of Collingwood with funding support for programs that further the goals of their organization and which align with one or more objectives identified in the PRC master plan. These are listed in the staff report. You'll see that we received 19 applications this year, totaling a combined request of $55,000. Following the evaluation process, 7 $1,500 grants and 6 $5,000 grants were allocated for a total of 13 grants, totaling $40,500. That is below budget. I'll just note that we did receive 8 total applications for 16 $1,500 grants, and we required that the score be 50% or higher, and you obviously had to be in the top 16 ranking. We received 11 applications for the $5,000 grants, and again, you had to have a 50% score or higher and be in the top 5 ranking. We ended up allocating 6 because there was a tie in that 5th place, and we still were within budget. So in order to be fiscally responsible and to maintain the integrity of the grant process, we opted to be firm on the number of grants available for allocation and on the requirement to meet the minimum score of 50% to be successful, instead of finding other ways to just allocate the full budgeted amount. So the grant recipients have already been notified of the results, but we would like to publicly acknowledge them. So congratulations to 5th Street Creative, Blue Mountain Watershed Trust Foundation, Collingwood Climate Action Team, Elephant Thoughts, Georgian Triangle Anglers Association, Root Music Ontario, the Port Music Festival, Blue Mountain Foundation for the Arts, Breaking Down Barriers, Collingwood Summer Music Festival, the Collingwood Youth Centre, the Environment Network, and Theatre Collingwood. We would also like to thank the community evaluators who assisted in this year's process. We were pleased to have 5 volunteers apply and complete the evaluation process alongside 2 PRC staff members. Any questions?
I'll turn to our attendees and to our clerk to see whether there's anyone interested in speaking or asking questions.
Thank you, Chair McLeod. At this point, it doesn't look like the public wishes to address the committee regarding this report.
So to get it on the table, we will have the council, the PRC 2021-04 allocation of the 2021 Community Recreation and Culture Grant that staff council received it. And just for information, that is moved by Councillor Berman and seconded by Mayor Saunderson. And are there questions or comments from members of the committee? Mayor Saunderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank staff and to thank those 5 community volunteers. It's not an easy task sifting through these applications, but the list speaks to the quality of those applicants, and it's great to see these grants going out into the community to have their to work their wonder through those organizations. And also congratulations to the 2020 recipients who have deferred and will receive their money this year. So that they can put that to use. So it's great to see this program coming to fruition, and congratulations to all the recipients.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, I have one, and just as a clarification for you, Manager Cubitt, this was the first year that we brought in people and had a framework by which we would evaluate these sorts of things. Is it the first year? I feel as though I remember passing this framework in the not too distant past.
Thank you, Chair McLeod. No, not necessarily. We've had a framework and we've had an evaluation process that has included members of the community. So a similar approach to the program. Awesome. The change you're probably recollecting is that we tied the program criteria more closely to the objectives within our PRC master plan. So there were some different obligations put onto the applicants in the last 2 years.
Thank you. And that has assisted it hasn't complicated things, it's made things easier, better?
I don't think it's complicated things. I think it's made it a lot more straightforward for both the applicant and the evaluators. And I think it's it can make us feel better that we're working together to accomplish those objectives that we were aiming to through our PRC master plan. Super. Thank you so much. And so with that, I will call the question. All those in favor of receiving this report, and that passes. Thank you. Which brings us to PRC-05 Park and Facilities Bylaw. And I think this one is coming from AED Culver. Oh, maybe not.
No. Oh, thank you, Chair. But the mark of a good leader is having good people who do good things. So I get to pass this along to Manager Martin. But I'll also mention that Manager Harrod is also in the gallery part of the Zoom meeting in case any questions pertaining to bylaw specifically or any of those penalties, I guess, need to be answered. He's available. He's gratefully available. This is not normally, he's working overtime by standing here. But I will pass it over to Wendy, who put in a great deal of work alongside Adam in developing this bylaw.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I do have a presentation to review. So thank you for allowing me to present the Park and Facilities Bylaw. Next slide, please. So obviously we were very aware of the challenges experienced last year with our parks, especially the waterfront parks. And we're expecting somewhat similar challenges this year, just with the COVID restrictions. We experienced issues with traffic, parking, signage, barbecues, garbage, janitorial and washroom capacity, tents and shade structures, and enforcement. So to help address these challenges, staff are proposing a new park bylaw, as well as operational changes to protect our parks, as well as provide a positive experience to our visitors. Next slide, please. So our current bylaw is outdated, with many physical, cultural, and pattern changes occurring since it was enacted. And the new bylaw is intended to regulate and promote responsible enjoyment and use of parks and facilities by outlining standards for all town parks, provide general regulations related to their use, permitted uses, and overall allowances in parks. And I just want to give a special thank you to Bylaw Supervisor Adam Herod for helping assist in preparing this bylaw. Next slide, please. So first I'm going to discuss some of the highlights of the bylaw, and then I'm going to discuss some operational changes that we will be continuing, that we kind of started partway through last year when we realized how much the population increase that the parks was having on the assets. So our first bylaw highlight is tents and shade structures. So the goal of the tent restriction in the bylaw is to reduce the footprint that a large tent takes up in the park and deter gatherings during COVID-19 restrictions, as well as prevent the visual blocking of the waterfront. So quoting from the bylaw, no person shall use a tent or sunshade within a park unless such tent or sunshade is solely supported by no more than one pole and having no more than one wall or side, or unless authorized to do so. So the next slide shows examples of permitted tents on the left and prohibited tents on the right. So these are some examples to allow the public to educate them as to what is appropriate in the parks and what is not appropriate in the parks. Next slide, please. Another highlight of the bylaw is barbecues. So this year we're just going to concentrate on Sunset Point, see how the operations go, and then we can always revisit other parks in the future. So areas within Sunset Point will be designated as barbecue permitted areas using town barbecues. So they'll be very similar as to what you see in public campgrounds. They're on a pole and they have like the one grill style. So the top picture is the east end of Sunset Point at the very end of Raglan by the gravel parking lot. So we're proposing 3 areas for the barbecues to be set up. Again, it's flexible as to the location of the barbecues and the quantity, but we thought we would start with 3 sections. The bottom photo is Sunset Point in the central area across from the chipper, kind of around the playground. So there's 2 fairly close to the road, because I always see a lot of people picnicking in that area. And then there's one set back in the cedar forest for barbecuing as well, in case the family is back there and enjoying the shade area. So these areas will be signed and clearly identified, in addition to the no barbecue permitted signage, identified as well as no barbecue permitted signage placed throughout the park. So I was going to have some signs posted on posts, but I'm also wanting to get some of those, you stamp them in the ground, like the trail etiquette signs, just to place throughout the parks so that people are aware that there's no barbecues allowed in this section of the park. So to quote the bylaw, no person shall use a barbecue in a park except in areas designated by the director for that purpose. And the next bylaw highlight is the curfew. The intent of having a curfew in the parks is to give enforcement agencies the tool to request people to leave the park or issue tickets. So we are encountering more vandalism in our parks is occurring overnight, and that consumes staff resources to repair and clean the park and results in a less satisfying experience for park users who encounter the damage. So to quote the bylaw, no person shall remain or enter into a park between the hours of 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. except as a participant or spectator of a function approved by the director. Next slide, please. Another highlight of the bylaw is sport field times. So restricting the time of year that our sport fields can be used will protect these valuable assets. So no person shall use a ball diamond or sport field between October 30th to April 30th without a permit from the director. And this really helps us with our maintenance practices. So we know that after the end of October, we can really go and fix those goal creases. We can work on the infields. And then as well in the spring, we're not experiencing a lot of damage due to teams going out there when the fields are too wet to handle the weight. Another highlight is issuing permits. So by providing the department the ability to issue permits for a number of activities that are listed in the bylaw, it allows staff to be aware of the activities occurring in parks and ensures the town is providing a safe environment for all by also ensuring that the park is being used for its intended purposes. So it's not that we don't want things happening in our parks. We just want to know when they're happening and where they're happening so that perhaps we can go after the rental time and make sure the park is safe. We can schedule our maintenance according to that. If we know that there's a tournament happening, then we can schedule maintenance before and we can schedule maintenance after. So it's more being able to protect our sport fields and our parks and make sure that they are being maintained properly. Next slide, please. Operational changes. So coming up to this year, staff will be removing garbage from Sunset Point and all waterfront parks on a daily basis and on weekends and holidays from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. It used to be that we could do garbage removal on Fridays and Mondays, but now we're just so busy that we now remove garbage at all our parks on a daily basis. And Sunset Point will have it from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day on especially and on the weekends and holidays. Janitorial. So during the initial year of COVID, the health unit directed the town to have only one washroom facility open in each washroom. And this really was very hard for the public as well, because there were lineups to the washrooms and a lot of frustration, which is understandable. So this year we will have all the facilities open within the washrooms with signage promoting health and safety protocols. And we will have janitorial staff rotating between the washrooms at Sunset Point from noon to 8, 7 days a week in mid-June to September. And so before the middle of June and after September, we will use our current resources to clean the washrooms as well as a contract cleaner on the weekends. So we will obviously be keeping them maintained. Just during the mid-June to September, we will have a rotational cleaning during the busy hours. Next slide, please. Other changes, so parking enforcement. So bylaw will be providing bylaw enforcement coverage 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. during the summer months with the additional 4 summer staff that they have. And then parking staff will be implementing paid parking at Sunset as per the approved staff report. And just a reminder to Collingwood residents that they will have free parking in any location, but there are reserved locations for the residents that are identified in the staff report. As well, there will be 2 parking spaces allocated for pickup just beside the chipper. Next slide, please. Another new project will be much bolder signage happening at Sunset Point in 3 locations. So it will identify the rules. It'll have identifiers as to where the washrooms are located, distance to downtown, distance to other waterfront parks, bylaw rules, hours, phone numbers, that type of thing. So anything to kind of help educate the public on etiquette and rules will only benefit their experience at our park. And last slide, and any questions? Be more than willing to answer any questions.
Thank you, and I'll turn to the clerk to see whether there's anyone from the public who wants to ask questions or make comments.
Thank you, Chair McLeod. Again, if there's anybody from the public, please press the raise your hand or *9. And it doesn't look like anyone from the public wishes to address the committee on this report.
Okay, and so I will look for a mover and a seconder. The council received staff report PRC 2021-05 Parks and Facilities Bylaw. and that council enact and pass a parks and facilities bylaw, and that council repeal bylaw 85-20. Do I have a mover? There's a mover, Councillor Berman, and a seconder, Mayor Saunderson. Questions or comments from the committee? Vice Chair Madigan.
Thank you very much. Through you to whoever would like to answer this. I'll spit it out. I'm having a hard time with the curfew in a park. I grew up in Collingwood. I was in these parks between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. And I would never vandalize, but I think they're a safe place for kids to go and congregate. And I would hate to say to a resident that lives here, with all the misinformation that's unfortunately making it through some pop-up ads on Facebook, that they couldn't walk through the park on a beautiful summer night at 11:15, or for the very active people that get up a little bit earlier than me, that wouldn't be able to walk through the park. And I also have some concern with who would be, policing, I guess, this. I really appreciate all the work that was put into this. In my 6.5 years, I rarely speak against a staff report. I think there's Dean Smile, so he knows that. So does Wendy. But it's just that one part that if I could get that severed, I would be happy to say yay to most of this. But if not, I will say nay to it. Please and thank you. Thank you.
So if I could clarify, so sorry, through the chair, yes. The intent of the curfew really was to give enforcement officers the tools to remove people if necessary. So it was never, it's not my intention as a park manager to keep people out of the parks. It was more, if stuff is going on and it's obviously causing vandalism, damage to the park, then the police then have the tool to remove people. That's what we found our challenge was, is we didn't have that tool before.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Is there any other comments from other members of this committee? Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I do share Councillor Madigan's concern, and I guess the concern is if you have a blanket prohibition, but it's only designed to catch certain activities, it seems to me there might be an application issue, and I don't know if there's a way to be more specific about that, because I agree, walking through the park at night or walking the dog or just sitting and looking at the moon or the sky, the stars, whatever, that's not problematic in my opinion. But my other question is through you, Madam Chair, to Manager Martin. So maybe you can just walk us through some of the enforcement, and I would imagine a big part of this is going to be education this summer to familiarize people with the changes that are coming into effect. And so I'm wondering if how that would impact enforcement, what kind of programs we have for education for our park users, and if we had given some thought to sort of ambassadors or people that might go around to help with the transition and get compliance through softer means, I guess.
Sure, through the chair, I can provide a little bit from my perspective, but I think Bylaw Supervisor Herod would have some input, as well as Executive Director Culver. So we will have 2 staff starting 7 a.m. and then another shift starting in the afternoon, and they'll have orange shirts. They'll be walking through the park solely picking up garbage. I'll be training them on speaking with the public and how to answer questions properly. Make sure that they're very comfortable in just being able to provide, I can't help you, but this is where you could get some help. They'll have access to the bylaw officers that will be working on the weekends. Education, I want to work with our communications department on etiquette within the parks, I guess, similar to our trails etiquette, as well as I know Bylaw Supervisor Herod has 4 additional staff. I'll let him speak about to that. I don't know if I've missed anything, Director Culver.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. If I could, I think something that maybe we should make clear is that the intent of the bylaw is to help with some migration towards behaviors, but not amongst the majority. The majority of people actually behave really well in the parks, and it really has a lot to do with sort of the impetus created by some people, and then it sort of cascades into more behavior. And so we're really just trying to sort of say, hey, here's the ballpark in which we can all play well together. So there's the fact that it's a bylaw and the fact that there's enforcement implied puts a color on things that I don't really think we ever intended. It was supposed to be about education. It was supposed to be about guidance. It was supposed to be, so the signs were going to go a long way. The signs are going to help people to say, oh, well, somebody doesn't want me to barbecue here, but I've been given an opportunity to barbecue over here, instead of making assumptions that create slippery slopes and then we get into challenges. I know Adam just jumped in here as well, so that's great. So he can help out with how bylaw approaches these things. But I know that even in our chats, Adam's talked about the fact that with the curfew in mind, we don't have to. We can create an exemption for people passing through the park. There's a way to lighten it. That really what we're trying to do is we're trying to prevent vandalism. That's not because everybody who goes to the park vandalizes. That's because a couple do, and we needed a tool in order to help the officers support that enforcement. And so maybe I'll hand it over to Adam, if you don't mind, Adam, and you can sort of talk to how you go about managing these enforcements.
Absolutely. And I think the question was from Member Saunderson, is that correct? So through Chair McLeod to Member Saunderson, anytime we enact a new bylaw, we always want to provide for an education piece. So we're not going to be out there issuing tickets. We're going to be educating the public on the rules, what's kind of expected. I don't expect any fines to be issued this year. It's our goal is compliance and just education at this point. So with the 4 summer staff coming on, they will obviously be told to educate wherever possible and to use discretion when interacting with the public. And I apologize. I think there was maybe another question. So if I missed something, I can answer.
Was there something else, Mayor Saunderson?
No, that was good. Well, yes, there is something else, but not related to Adam's answer. Thank you for that. It was fulsome. I just wondering about the sports and activities. It says that there's no baseball, softball, basketball, volleyball, football, soccer, rugby, tennis, cricket, badminton, croquet, ultimate frisbee, disc golf, skateboarding. So unless they're in designated areas, is there any portion of the Sunset Park where those are designated, or is that just a blanket prohibition?
Dr. Culver.
Yep, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, no problem. I can help with this one. Through you, Chair, there's no area that's specifically designated for sport, but the intent is basically for, you'll notice in the bylaw that there's a lot of sort of delegation to my role. And the reason for that is so that we can adapt to whatever occurs. We have had complaints and anecdotal complaints, I guess, regarding injuries or issues caused by throwing frisbees and whatnot. It's not that big a park, as much as it feels vast in it's not that big a park. And we do have a lot of open space where that activity is absolutely possible. Millennium is usually a lot more wide open than Sunset Point. Harborview has always got availability for lots and lots of grass space for, throwing, projectile sports, as it were. The intent here is not to kill fun. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is provide the tools and ability for staff to adapt and react to things like the capacity issues we've experienced. We are all about getting people into park. We're all about making sure that they have the best possible experience in the park. And what we found, and this is really hard, like I said earlier, when we talk about bylaws, because it feels like what we're doing is throwing restrictions on. What we're throwing organization on. We're trying to allow people to do what they want to do and not be inhibited or compromised by somebody else doing something that's in conflict. We're trying to create organization. So we're happy to see people enjoying parks in whatever form they choose. We're not going to be jumping in to arrest people for playing Frisbee. We're really just, this bylaw, it provides some tools for us to help with organizing and enhancing everybody's experience.
Okay, and just as a follow-up comment then, so I think what I'm taking from that is it's fairly contextual. So on a weekend when it's extremely crowded, that would be an issue. But maybe on a Wednesday when there's not a lot of people there, somebody throwing a Frisbee back and forth might not be an issue. So I don't know if there's a way, I mean, it does talk about your discretion subject to subsection 2, but that really talks about a ball diamond, as far as I can tell, or playing field. So I don't know if there's a way to just be a little more, to build in that discretion that you're talking about, because I guess my concern is I don't want to have a ban that it gets implemented when convenient. It seems to me if there's a way in the wording to make it more discretionary, then that gives you the flexibility without sort of ignoring the provision 4 days a week or something. And so, and I think that maybe goes to Councillor Madigan's comment about the contextual aspect of the midnight usage. So I just would, I guess I'd be looking to refer those matters back to staff for some further clarification to make them more applicable, I think.
Yeah, through you, Chair, we can totally take that back and re-review the wording to make sure that it's not misunderstood. I think, again, the approach that we have to take when we look at bylaws is how do we equip, bylaw officers or whomever needs to with the tools in order to draw the lines that need to be drawn. But again, the goal here isn't to, get in the way of people enjoying themselves or stopping a mom and daughter from throwing a ball in the park or anything like that, on a Wednesday evening. It makes no sense for that to be the intent of the bylaw. That's not what we're trying to do. But I do get your point, and I think what we can do is go away and just do another review to make sure that that discretion is implied, so that we're not, again, not doing more than what the bylaw, what we need the bylaw to do.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions, and if we can get those aspects referred back, then I'm prepared to support this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I'm actually going to go a little further than that, and so I'm going to ask Vice Chair Madigan to take over the chair for a moment or two, please.
Hala, of course I will. Is there any questions from the committee? Oh, wow. Chair, Vice Chair, Chair McLeod, please go ahead and...
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, and I also have an amendment to the motion that's on the table. So first of all, in the places where barbecuing will be allowed in the East End and the other two spots in Sunset Point, will we be allowed to or encouraged to bring our own implements for that, our own barbecues? Or would it be only the ones that are provided by the town? Through you, Mr. Chair, to Acting Director Culver.
So this is one we've looked at very carefully through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
We because there's our motivation for managing barbecues at all is purely around hazards. It's the only reason, and the safest way for us to do this, to ensure things like coals are disposed of safely and in the proper receptacles, that they're in a place that provides the amount of space needed for children or whomever to move around a barbecue and not risk injury, and a number of other considerations that come with barbecuing naturally. We've sort of included that they would be it would be our municipal facilities that are used. Having said that, if somebody brings a barbecue and puts it on top of our municipal facility and barbecues on it because it provides a bigger surface area, no one is going to challenge them. That's not the intent, and that's not, I don't believe, how it's written, although we can take another look and ensure that. But the point really is to make sure that we have the proper spacing, the proper laneways for people to move, the proper disposal implements available in order for there to be basically safe use of barbecues in those areas.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, and to Acting Executive Director Culver, there is barbecuing allowed in other parks besides Sunset. Yes, or am I mistaken on that?
Actually, I'm going to defer. I believe so. But
I think so too, but I just wanted to be sure.
But I believe I'm going to defer to Wendy and Adam to help out with that answer. But I'm pretty sure.
The way through the chair, the way the bylaw is written right now, it says no person shall use a barbecue in a park except in areas designated by the director for that purpose. So as it's worded, no, there's no barbecuing allowed unless it's designated. Yeah.
So that through the chair, that's a new provision. So there, up until this year, there would have been, and indeed we sort of directed people to go elsewhere from Sunset for their barbecuing needs.
Correct.
I see.
And through you, Chair, that was one of the challenges as well, because as we were trying to manage the barbecue issues at Sunset Point and directing people elsewhere, they were finding some locations that were less desirable for barbecuing because of things like the natural space, like they were trees and things like that made a risk higher when it came to barbecuing. But we've looked closely at places like Millennium Park, which is completely available for barbecuing. So we can potentially, maybe what we can do in between now and council is take a look at that to ensure that there are other opportunities away from Sunset Point to make sure that there are options for people. Millennium is absolutely available to barbecuing. And it's one of the places where we did encourage people to go last year. And I think that probably there are portions of Harborview that we could, although that's where it gets a little touchy because there are some constrained spaces there that have been challenging in the past. Okay. But we should review that one. I agree with you.
Thank you. So I am to understand that we're not actually going to approve this tonight then, because if we are thinking that we're taking a vote on this, then I want to put in, well, I'm just going to put it in anyway.
Okay, just Chair McLeod, just give me 2 seconds for my clarity, please, and thank you.
Yeah.
Because you asked a great question that I don't know if I understood the answer. So I'm going to steal it away because it's your question. So Chair McLeod asked a question about in designated areas if people could bring their own barbecues, and you said yes, they could if they put it on top of ours. But what if they don't? So my fear is you said safety 10 feet around, that if it is allowed, then Timmy, Tom, well, Brian, Steve, and Bob can go down to Sunset Point and bring our hibachi. Because the town facility one is being used, we're going to cook up our hamburgers and hot dogs. Was that your question? Chair, do you want to know if anybody can bring them down and put them anywhere? Was it within the designated areas? Because then it doesn't limit the space. If I said to Steve and Brian, come on over to my backyard and put a tent up, but you have to put it 30 feet apart. If I don't tell them that, they're going to put it close to each other so they can talk about me in the middle of the night. So that being said, all seriousness, if people are going to go down there and they know that they can see their friend barbecue, or they're going to bring more barbecues so they can have a big party because COVID will be gone and God willing, everything will go back to normal and we can enjoy our summer. I think that was the intent of your question, was it not?
It was.
Okay.
Right. So if I can respond to that, the point of having the municipal facilities is because it provides the space. If you're in the vicinity of that municipal facility feature, that implement, we have spaced things appropriately so that there is room for traffic, there's room for movement, and it creates space for people to engage in something that comes with inherent hazards. And so I think there are six or seven locations in Sunset Point alone that we've identified as barbecue friendly, and we're going to create those implements in those places for spacing. So no, the intent would not be for you to bring your hibachi and go into the zone created by those barbecue spaces, put your hibachi down and create more hazards within a more constrained space. That would be the opposite of what we're intending to do. The intent was to give a lot of opportunity for people to come and barbecue. But when those implements, if somebody maxed them out, then no, you would not be able to barbecue after that because we wouldn't have the facilities available.
Okay. Thank you very much for your clarification and fantastic question, Chair McLeod. I will continue to ask.
Right. I have a couple of follow-ups, and And I want to bring our attention to item number 14, subsection 3, and just to register my ultimate sadness that this needs to be included in a bylaw. And it refers to urinating and defecating in our parks. The fact that we would need to legislate that is so disappointing. So I will leave that where it sits. And then I will propose an amendment to the motion that is on the table. And the amendment is that staff receive a staff report and that council enact and pass a parks and facilities bylaw with the exceptions of items 4, subsection 1 and item 7, subsection 4. And those are the pieces regarding the overnights and the curfew. So section 4 is, well, it's all the hours of operation, basically that entire section, and except for section C, sorry. So I'd like to strike item 4 in the bylaw, subsection 1 and subsections A and B, and also item 7, subsection 4, no person shall park a vehicle. And I say this because I have watched some submarine races at Sunset Point in my day. And I look forward to watching the Perseid meteor shower this summer at 3 o'clock in the morning with my husband, as we have done many years. And I just cannot, even though I didn't get to have children myself, I cannot take away from the future children of Collingwood the opportunity to get up to no good at Sunset Point in the middle of the night. So that I will need a seconder for that motion, and I'm looking for one from this committee. Thank you, Councillor Berman.
Chair McLeod, I'm still the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
God bless. God bless. Thank you for handing it over to me and quickly forgetting. But I recall a bright young councillor earlier in this discussion asking for something to be severed or deferred. So I will wait until that gets back to you. And I do recall Mayor Saunderson asking for this to go back and kind of rejig it because they've heard our concerns. I think either way to the public, it's been explained to us, but sometimes through explanation, people still don't listen. And I think with all the negativity surrounding Sunset Point and the implications of misuse of our land, that this could get kind of dusty within the community. And I want it to be very clear because I don't think our positive message is getting out there through the world of social media. And it's rather frustrating that I myself have answered obvious questions with obvious answers that people were not understanding. So Mayor Saunderson, because you brought it first, I'm going to look to you. Did you want to move that it go back and be redone, sir?
Yes, I'm prepared to move that. And I think the staff have got a good catalog of the items that have been identified. And so I'm quite happy to move that be referred back to staff for further wordsmithing, please.
So before I took over the meeting, I heard you say that, and I was going to happily second that, because if not, I would be voting against this. So I will hand back the chair to Chair McLeod.
Thank you. And so we have on the table a motion to refer. And we have a seconder on that, and Executive Director Culver.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make sure that we captured, you were listing subsections there that I wanted to make sure. So if I could ask that you email those specifically so that we can make sure they're addressed before we come to council. I just want to make sure they're captured. I think I've got everybody else's, but those ones I want to be sure of as well.
Terrific. I can definitely send that to you. And so we'll look forward. I'll call the question. All those in favor of referring this back to staff to come back to council. I'm going to guess on May, whatever it is, right before the May 24 weekend. And we'll have that passed and ready to go. All in favor. And that passes. Thank you. And I will make sure that I send to you those ones that are of concern to me. Thank you, Vice Chair Madigan, for stick handling that beautifully. And that brings us to item 5 on our agenda, which is reports and minutes of other committees and agendas. An item, and the motion is that the minutes of the various committees and boards provided below be received and recommendations contained therein be approved. We have item 5.1, which is the Accessibility Advisory Committee, 5.2, the Downtown BIA Board of Management, 5.3, the Museum Advisory Committee, and 5.4, the Trails and Active Transportation Committee. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive those? Moved by Vice Chair Madigan and seconded by Mayor Saunderson. Do we have question or comment on any of these issues or any of these minutes that are coming through? Thank you. And so I will call the question. All those in favor? That passes. We now have our consent agenda, item 6 on the agenda, that council herein receive the general consent agenda, and further that the information and opinions provided in the general consent agenda items are those of the authors and not verified or approved as being correct. One item on this, which is an item, which is 6.1 from South Bruce Peninsula, the lottery licensing to assist small organizations. Would anyone like to pull that from the agenda for comment or direction? Seeing none, I will call the question. We received the, oh, I guess I need a mover and a seconder to receive that, don't I? Moved by Vice Chair Madigan, seconded by Councillor Rimmon. And I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that passes. We now move on to departmental updates and discussions. And I believe we begin with Chief Parr. Happy Firefighters Week or something. There was something earlier this week.
Through you, Chair. It's International Recognition of Firefighters Day was on Tuesday. So thank you very much. Just a brief outline of this. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. In our fire master plan that council accepted, it said to try and to show the level of service that we offer and maintain, that I should do an update annually on our activities. So this is what I'm presenting now. I'm sorry it's a little late, but the OFM office has been very busy, as we would know, with the emergency management side, and to have our stats back, so it's factual that I'm presenting. So next slide, please. I never thought I'd say that, because I never thought I'd do a PowerPoint presentation. So some of our accomplishments in 2020 was we received a new fireboat, Marine One, and put it into service. We a little sad that we couldn't have an official launching of the boat, but this will happen this year, hopefully, if everything goes right. COVID drive-bys, we did 152 drive-bys, including birthday parties and recognition of hospital and emergency service workers throughout the town. We had 22 working fires last year. Usually we have an average of 7 to 10 working fires, so it was an exceptional year with a high dollar loss, because we know the two large fires downtown Collingwood. Fire prevention activities were, we didn't slow down because of COVID. We didn't miss a thing, nor could I have my prevention staff stay at home, because no matter, we thought the public wasn't using facilities, but we had restaurants and other facilities open for curbside, and they needed to do their compliancy. Plus, we also have the, we got very inventive with our vulnerable occupancy compliance last year, and we're able to do tabletop exercises where we couldn't use the high school students to bring them in to do evacuations. So that was very successful. And some of that prevention activities, just to explain, was we did investigations. Investigations were more, we had a lot of hoarding issues last year. So when you see investigations, it wasn't for compliance charges. It was just because we had to investigate a lot of complaints we received, because it seemed a lot of people were seeing things that they would normally not see with COVID times. We were able to accomplish our 2020 emergency management compliance, and it was confirmed. We received that not too long ago, which was different in a world of COVID. And I was very proud of the team and the group that we have as the emergency management team. And then we, with directions from council, we were able to amend the fireworks bylaw, and hopefully that we can have some success with that this year. So next slide, please. So this is a breakdown of the calls. I didn't break it down to individual everything we got, but an example in rescue, it could be elevator rescue, automobile rescue, or ice or water rescue. The 57 fire and emergency response, that's anything from alarm calls to fires, to any assist from CO alarms to whatever we do every time that the alarms go and the public calls 911. or they can call in on the office line also. And there you go. There's a call in the background going off as we speak. So the bottom of this is you see there's a standard that I try to meet for the town. And so NFPA 1710, 8 minutes or less response time within the municipality and exceed that 90% of the time. And our average response time was 6 minutes and 31 seconds. So if you go to the next slide, I have to thank staff. Lindsay, our GIS specialist, fabulous person, put this stuff together for me, and it shows you the variety and also the spread of the calls. So that would give you an idea why the time frame's a little, we get up to the 6 minute and 31 seconds because of that. A little bit longer last year, and they take 90%, so you get rid of the best and the worst, but there were still some in the middle because of the amount of fires that had a little bit of a delay in our response. But to finalize this and finish this up, to assure you that I believe that we're delivering a great service. We're meeting any expectations, and the level of service I've set for my department, we're well in the threshold for that. So, and with that, if you have any questions, I'd love to answer.
Members of the committee, any comments or questions for Chief Parr? Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Chief. Thanks for that, Chief. I know we have many discussions at County Council about the response times for cardiac events, and you know, that when the rural areas, it tends to be longer. And so I'm just wondering, yeah, I know you had a stat up on that last slide about the number of medical emergencies, and I'm wondering if you can give us an idea of how many of those might have been cardiac related.
Through you, Chair. It's funny you ask, because I got that stat right here. We had 13 times that we actually deployed the defib onto a patient in cardiac arrest. So, but we, with those 200, we're in such a low category for our tiered response. So to have that many calls, that show that a lot of those are serious calls. We just don't run for a bloody nose or somebody with respiratory distress. They have to meet certain criteria for our response. So, but to deploy a defibrillator 13 times, and we also had 3 saves within those 13 deployments. And as I probably have explained before, and just to reaffirm, this is why this model works so well in Collingwood, because the paramedic base is on the east side, we're on the west side, and we have great response here with defibrillators, and they have great response there. And it was a really good choice not to combine us into one service, especially when you're paying full-time firefighters to be here all the time. So again, we're not trying to exceed our authority or our training, but we do take the training through paramedic services, and I think that's been a big success also with the program.
No, and I think the results speak for themselves. So 3 saves there is fantastic. So thank you for that.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Vice Chair Madigan.
Thank you very much, Chair McLeod, and through you to our Chief. It's fantastic to hear that the boat's finally in the water. Regretful we couldn't do a launch. But do you anticipate a busy summer? Because this year you have a dedicated boat, and we have our, where we take care of our neighbors. Has that been set up with our other neighbors along the waterway, that you will be giving your expertise and assistance to them as well?
Through you, Chair McLeod, to Councillor Madigan, yes. We last year we launched the boat late September and had 17 responses with the boat. This year, we have the boat in, and not even officially in, where all my staff were signed out. We've already had 2 responses. I can see it being a busy summer, but prepared for it. The town of Wasaga Beach and the town of Blue Mountain both have the ability to respond, but if we're needed, we can assist. And we have created a partnership with the Coast Guard out of Meaford now, and they're actually going to come and do some training with us. So that's it's a big win for the Collingwood Fire Service in that respect. Working on some kind of an agreement with the OPP, so if they get a call, they understand we have a boat and we have 24/7 response with it also. So, but they both parties, especially the town of Blue Mountains, understand the size and ability of our boat, and we know what they have. So it'll be a good mix that way.
Follow up, Vice Chair Madigan?
Just fantastic, and it's lovely to hear that we're going to get some more training for our already fantastic staff through the Coast Guard. But rather than waiting till other business, if I can steal Chief Parr away right now, in regards to our last conversation about barbecues in the park, and I wanted to bring it up back then, but I didn't know if the chief was with us at that point. Coals. Getting rid of the hot coals, if that could also be added to the list, or if Chief Parr can even just chat about it now with barbecues. It's been a long time since I've barbecued with coals, and I wouldn't trust myself with those, but I know that they're quite hot still when they're over. So please and thank you.
You, Chair, to Councillor Madigan. Yeah, I'm very proud of what Dean and his team's done for our parks with the refuge bins that are available for the barbecue area. That was a big concern because I think Dean had to address this because of last year we were finding them dumping coals in the water or just on the grass. We had 2 small grass fires at the point. So again, if I'm giving anybody any advice, don't put them in cardboard boxes and put them in your garage or house. I've been to too many fires in my 37 years on the fire service because of that. So make sure you use a metal can, safe area if you're discharging or disposing of coals. Or if you're in our parks, use the facilities that are supplied to you. Wendy's did a great job, and when they searched these out, and they've really thought that barbecue situation out in the park, I believe, and I was consultated with it, and I believe it's a great plan they put together.
I sense that's the end from Vice Chair Madigan. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the committee members? Seeing none, I have one, and that is whether you, Chief Parr, have been the recipient of any other insurance money. You gave us an update the last time that you spoke with us through the program that was enacted a couple of years ago.
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, we actually did. We got some money from the Red Hen Fire. So total now, to date, we have $66,708 received through the insurance recovery plan since we've did it. So in 2020, the total recovery was $56,000 of that money. So that far offset any recovery or costs we had for my budget for overtime or equipment that was damaged. Sporting Life was very hard on equipment, and that replaced all the equipment too. So,
thank you for that update. Oh yes, sorry, Chief Parr.
Sorry, through you, Chair. There's one other little quick update. I was hoping to do it at the until we had to defer the meeting to now, but Emergency Preparedness Week was May 2nd to the 8th. Kind of an important issue since what's happened in the world in the last little while. This year's theme is Be Prepared for Everything. So my biggest thing is an emergency preparedness kit. Water, 1 gallon per person per day for 3 days, some non-perishable food, radio with either crank or battery, a flashlight, first aid kit, extra batteries for your anything that needs it, a whistle in case you have to notice anybody, and for all pet owners, please don't forget to have that 3-day food supply for your pets. The other big thing that we're seeing is that cyber emergencies are coming in. So when you define emergencies, it's anything from man-made to human cause to nature. Well, now they're saying to be prepared for cyber. So make sure you're cautious with all your passwords, and anytime you have any backups you can do with your computers. So the big thing with an emergency plan also is an evacuation plan and emergency phone numbers, and everybody has those. We'll all be good in Collingwood. So, and I'd just like to thank our communications team for that, because they've been putting out great messages, and also the clerk Amos, who give me a little reminder. I've been so much into this COVID that she gave me a reminder that maybe there's something coming up, and I go, oh my God, I forgot Emergency Preparedness Week. So I thank Sarah for that reminder. So
thank you so much, Chief Parr.
Thank you, Chair.
Moving on to item 7.2, we have an update from Acting Executive Director Culver regarding COVID response. Director Culver.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to continue to be lazy and defer over to Manager Karen to help just with a brief overview of the document that's been produced. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director. We do have a slideshow here. Thank you. So this is what we're calling a response, COVID-19 response plan for special event permitting for 2021. Next slide, please. The COVID-19 response plan for special event permitting is a plan for how special event permit applications will be addressed within each of Ontario's COVID-19 color zones in 2021. And it's also a reference tool to provide staff and the public with a known predetermined response to the various color zones and how special event permits will be managed within each. And it's a reference tool to ensure that event permit applicants are aware in advance of submitting an application of what they can and can't seek access to in 2021. Next slide, please. It was created because the community is optimistic that in-person special events will be able to take place later in 2021, and special event permits have started being submitted. The town seeks to support third-party event organizers in our community, and we understand that the permit holders' health and safety obligations are also the town's obligations by extension. Assisting the permit holder in managing their health and safety obligations mitigates risk to the corporation and to the community at large. The town realizes that staff and infrastructure are required to ensure that this happens effectively and efficiently. And managing the number of people gathered at any one time really is the key in each of the color zones. And there are limited municipal staff spaces where this can be effectively managed, and there are a limited number of staff available to monitor this. As such, this requires us to put some parameters around the special event permits we issue in 2021, and that's why this plan was created. Next slide, please. So the plan identifies that permits will only be issued within the orange or better color zones. Permits will only be issued for outdoor events at this time. Now, this does not preclude indoor facilities from being rented for meetings and activities intended for those spaces. For example, the Simcoe Street Theatre, Central Park Arena, etc., will still be available for rent in accordance with the provincial framework for those intended uses. And that falls within the facility rental program, so it's outside of tonight's discussion about special event permitting process. A limited number of venues will be approved for use. These are the Shipyards Amphitheatre and the Pine Street parking lot. The town will not permit the closure of streets for the purposes of special events at this time. Venues will be staffed. The town will assign a staff member to attend and monitor all permitted events. BIA staff members will fulfill this obligation for all BIA managed events. The staff member will ensure that the permit holder's COVID-19 health and safety plan is implemented, contract tracing is properly conducted, all conditions of the event permit are addressed, and that capacity limitations are adhered to. The town will assign an hourly rate for staffing recovery costs, and that'll be added, it'll be assigned to the event permit applicant in addition to the permit application fee. Additional infrastructure will be provided to the venues that don't currently have perimeter delineation. A limited number of permits will be issued per venue per day, and we are suggesting one only at this time. And applicants must be nimble and prepared. Permits will not be issued more than 1 month in advance. The COVID-19 health and safety plans they put together, they must be presented in advance, and the permit applicant must demonstrate that they have the capacity and are equipped to adjust those plans according to the potentially changed restriction of their event day. Next slide, please. So how we are preparing. We're starting with perimeter ropes being added to the Shipyards Amphitheatre. This has been discussed for several years now to make the space easier to manage as a licensed event area, but pursuing this project now addresses our immediate needs, and it will have a lasting benefit to that event space. We're developing some training for the event staff who will be tasked with supervising and monitoring the permitted events, and discussions continue with the BIA regarding the use of the Pine Street parking lot. While no concerns have been identified with BIA staff at this time, we will continue to assess and adapt the approach as needed. And then last slide, please. there could be some challenges down the road. This response plan will be continuously monitored and assessed, and we will adapt it to the changes in the provincial framework as required, and in continued collaboration with the Simcoe Municipal District Health Unit, who helped us implement this one. Any questions?
Questions for Manager Cubitt from any member of the committee? Thank you very much. I actually have a question for Acting Executive Director Culver regarding COVID, which is to do with our boat launch. And I was twigged by Vice Chair Madigan's questions to Chief Parr regarding the boat. Where is it that we stand right now, Director Culver, when it comes to launching a boat at our own marina or at our own boat launch off Heritage Drive?
So thank you, Chair. So we've been asking this question frequently throughout the stay-at-home period, and as recently as May 1st, I think, in response to a question that CAO Skinner had asked of the health unit, Dr. Revelado has provided a response that I'll just read you. This is completely consistent with what we've been receiving from the health unit, the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. In keeping with our guidance document on marinas, I've advised municipalities that it's my interpretation that boat launches were akin to marinas, whereby they are both intended to launch watercraft. So the way that works in terms of the language that we provided is that boat launches can be used for the same purposes that marinas are used for. So under stay-at-home orders, it would be repairs, to access a property that can only be accessed by boat, and for commercial activities are not recreation based. So those are the only real applications we can use a marina for. And by fusing together marinas and launches, we were applying the same conditions. Completely understand, and I have to say this is part of the response. I completely understand the confusion that the community is feeling, and the disassociation that they would like there to be between boat launches and marinas, because in other health units that has been the case. There has been in other communities there has been a disassociation of boat launches for something and marinas for something else. But unfortunately, in our case, this is the advice we're receiving, the guidance we're receiving, and so we're bound to follow the health unit guidance. And unfortunately, that's the answer I have to provide today.
And is there a connection between, as Manager Cubitt was explaining, with special events and the plans that we're having, it has to do with the orange level or the red level or the green level or the yellow level? Does the boat launch, is there a color-coded level that has something to do with the boat launch too?
So thank you, Chair. That's a great question. So throughout the pandemic period, the only other time that a marina has been closed was at the very, very beginning, when there wasn't really any guidance at all. And so we had some blockages, and there were, you'll remember, giant billboard signs that we had up when it was reopened around organizing, launching based on certain criteria. We're at a different place now. So this closure is only related to the stay-at-home order. The stay-at-home order is the only thing that I understand that is driving marinas to be closed, because they weren't previously. And under even red condition, there was not, marinas weren't closed. And for boat launches, this whole thing has come as a result of the stay-at-home measures implemented by the province. So again, without having the crystal ball that I wish I had to predict what was going to happen next, it might be seen to be reasonable that when the stay-at-home order is lifted, that marinas might be coming back into full effect. Certainly it is an activity where isolation is possible. But having said that, I don't possess that crystal ball, right. and we have to wait for what the province tells us, and then the guidance that we receive from the health unit that helps direct our responses.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that very thorough answer. And so I think we'll thank you for your time, and we will move on to item 7.3, which is an update from the museum. And Melissa Shaw, the museum supervisor, has things to tell us.
Thank you, Chair McLeod. I just have a brief slide deck to share with you to highlight some of the exciting projects that we have going on at the museum behind the scenes. And I'd first like to say Happy Museum Month. May is Museum Month. Every May, museums around the world celebrate museums of all kinds and sizes. And certainly, even though this is our second May with our doors closed to the public because of a state of emergency order, we are busy behind the scenes, maintaining contact with our community and making a difference in their lives. This year's theme is Recover and Imagine, and we are doing both in this challenging year. And it aptly sums up our efforts for both staff and our volunteers. Next slide, please. Our most recent kind of finalizing a project we've been working on for a very long time was the beautiful graphic that you see here on your screen. This was installed by a company we've been working with on April 22nd. And the picture on the right shows the perspective of this new launch day mural in relation to the first phase of this gallery redesign project that we've been working on. And you can see the edge of the wooden boat there. And just to give you an idea of what the south end of the gallery is shaping up to look like, staff will be working with, museum staff will be working with arena staff to help install some of our quite large half models that we actually removed from storage today. So they're happily waiting in the gallery to be installed on the adjoining wall of this new launch day mural. And of course, the shipyard is a very important part of our town's history, and inevitably an exhibit is always dedicated to this history. So this launch day exhibit is replacing an exhibit about the shipyard that was actually installed for, I think, about 15 to 20 years. So we were really ready for a refresh. And this is kind of the first picture of that result. So we will again be placing some artifacts on this wall, and we'll be looking forward to an exhibit opening of some kind later this year. Next slide, please. Another exciting pilot project that we've been doing is kind of gauging the community's interest in heritage-inspired merchandise. And our first t-shirt launched on International Women's Day. It featured a photograph of women welders at the Collingwood shipyards from 1943. And the lovely lady on the left is Collingwood resident Emma Wilson. And she's actually pictured in this 1943 photograph. She's the first woman on the left in the first row, and she was 17 years old. And she is wearing her t-shirt with pride. And the sale of these t-shirts, the response from the community was phenomenal. We sold out. We are presently working to fulfill 70 more orders with shirts that have just come in. And the number of stories we received from descendants of these women and Emma, the woman herself, was the closest that staff kind of felt to having those really meaningful interactions with our community that typically surround the shipyard social that has become kind of one of our main events throughout the year. So this was our first shirt, a wild success. And our next shirt is actually being launched on Tuesday for May is Museum Month. And it will feature another historic photograph from the Collingwood Museum's archives with another kind of cheeky statement to kind of put a new lens on our history and engage new audiences in our past. Next slide, please. And finally, as another way that we're looking to engage our residents during our closure, one of our volunteers, actually the chair of our advisory committee, has developed a podcast called Stories from Another Day. And it is a Collingwood Museum podcast. Episode 1 just launched on May the 4th, so that was Tuesday. And it was called Beginning at the End, and actually talks about the last launch that happened at the Collingwood shipyards, which was the icebreaker, so Wilfrid Laurier. The podcasts are about 10 minutes tops, so it's a really easy listen. And they feature anything from Collingwood's past, so 160 years plus of history. And they're very well written and researched. And you can find our podcast on Spotify or anywhere that you find the podcasts that you follow. And I encourage you all to follow the podcast. And if you're not following us on Facebook, please do, because again, that is where our new t-shirt launch is going to be at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. And we're not taking reservations nor revealing anything in advance, because we do predict that these will sell out very quickly as well. And that's all for me.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? And I can report that it's on Apple as well, Apple Podcast, because I just downloaded it. So there we go. Thank you. And I'll thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And brings us to item number 8 in our agenda, which is public delegations. I will turn to the clerk to see whether there's anyone who wants to speak to us for 5 minutes. You're muted, Clerk Armless.
We need like a sign or something for that. Thank you very much, Chair McLeod. Again, to the attendees that are watching, if you wish to present anything within this committee's mandate, ask any questions or provide any comments, please press the raise your hand feature. And Chair McLeod, it doesn't look like anybody wishes to address the committee at this time.
Thank you. Which brings us to item number 9, other business. Is there any other business from members of the committee this evening? And that brings us to item number 10. And I believe I will look for a motion to adjourn. Vice Chair Madigan. And so I will call the question. I guess we need a seconder. Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. And I'll call the question. Thank you. All those in favor of adjournment, we will declare ourselves adjourned at 6:55 p.m. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thanks very much. Good night.